Yay, beautiful, Sophia. So nice. Just to start, I think this is your very first presidential election that you're able to vote in. Um, what is it like to be voting for the first time in general, but also for the first time in this specific election?
Mhm. Yeah, so I would just say that it's very exciting, first of all, to be voting in a presidential election. I remember back in 2016, I was still in high school, and definitely it felt like there wasn't much that I could do when I was 16 and I was still young, still in high school. But now it's incredible to have that feeling of being able to make an impact and actually do my civic duty in voting in an election. And I think specifically in this year, there's, many different factors that are going about and a lot to think about. But I think especially during this monumental time, I'm excited to take a part and for it to be my first election.
Nice. Um, I imagine you're still a California resident, right? So, what are your
Yes.
plans for your ballot? Have you done an absentee thing? Will you be home for that particular day?
Mhm. So I actually just got my mail-in ballot today, which is really
Hey,
exciting.
amazing.
So
Perfect
I'm going,
timing.
yeah, so I'm going to be filling it out later today, but that was really exciting. That kind of made my morning.
That's awesome. Yeah, so you registered and submitted, and then they sent it out to you. That is awesome. So if you think about sort of this civic milestone and voting for the first time through the lens of being an artist, through the lens of playing the violin, being an orchestral musician, being a chamber musician, um, how how does that sort of how has that impacted you? How has that shaped the way you think about politics or the way you think about engaging in the process?
Mhm. Definitely. I think from my experiences in chamber music and orchestral playing, I think one of the main things that I took away from it was the importance of communicating with your players and with kind of your teammates and just making sure that you have the same common goals in mind. And I think in music, whether that be like your phrasing, how you lead your orchestra or your group of chamber music players to the same goal, to the same ending point. It's one of those things where I think I really took away the importance of generating and creating a community that has a similar goal at the end. And I think to put that into a political perspective, I think especially in this election where there's a lot of controversy behind mail in voting and making sure that even in this COVID time, we get all of our votes in. I think just reaching out to my network and my community around me, making sure that my friends and family are voting and communicating that similar end goal for everyone. I think that's something that I found parallels between music and in this current election.
That's awesome. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it in that way specifically, with regard to kind of like galvanizing the people in that you play with, and then galvanizing the people that you live and work with.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Are your parents U.S. citizens?
Yes,
They
they
are.
became
Okay.
US citizens recently. So,
Yay! Is this
yeah,
their
they're
first
also,
election?
yes, yeah, they're also voting in their
Oh
first.
my God, that is so cool. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
Really exciting.
That is awesome. Voting is about using your voice to affect change, right? Even if it's one voice, it is one voice, and that one voice can be a determining factor, can be a really important factor. And how do you sort of think about that through the lens of playing an instrument, playing the violin, being a musician? Um, how do you see a parallel, or do you see a parallel between your metaphorical voice as a musician and your voting voice?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think one of the things that originally drew me to music and why I ultimately keep playing is its power to kind of persuade your audience to feel some type of way.
Mm,
And I think that power of persuasion and that power and creating something where others are affected by it, and in a good way, I hope. But I think that power is something that I really find a parallel with and being able to amplify your voice. I think whenever you like a statement, a action, whatever, I think it's important to know how to spread your message to others to be able to persuade them to act in a certain way or think in a certain way. And I think being able to have that power of persuasion in music in me has enabled me to channel that into my political presence as well.
That's so cool. And so it's like it's about communication. It's about,
Yeah.
putting your stamp on something or your spin on something and being able to communicate it clearly, right? And to
Mhm.
be able to um, put all the things, the feels, the ideas, um, the space that you occupy when you're playing something to share that with the people that are receiving it. Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Um, so I know you've played in orchestras and chamber music groups. How do you feel? Do you see any parallels or sort of similarities in being sort of one part of a larger whole, and how that might relate to voting or to just being engaged in civic responsibility?
Yeah. Um, Kind of on the similar lines of what I mentioned earlier, I think, orchestra especially, it's one of those things where if one person doesn't play at the right spot, doesn't come in at the certain entrance, it
Hasn't
tends to,
practiced.
yeah, it tends to, like fall apart a little bit, or it doesn't, achieve the end result that people are desiring. And I think in that sense, everyone in orchestra has to step up, practice, memorize, and know how others intertwine within their lives as well. So I think that kind of parallels to the election and making sure that everyone is responsible for their own duties and kind of stepping up to the plate and taking that ownership.
That's nice. And how do you, to just sort of take it one step further, this is a very, these are very divided times, right? We have our countries, there's a lot of contention.
Yeah.
And to take that to the next level of like how you might deal with disagreements in a chamber ensemble rehearsal, or even on a musical level, like if there are moments where the cello section is doing this and the violins interrupt, or the horns are doing this and um, the cellos interrupt. Um, how do you sort of link those types of things? And I guess one is more literal and one is more figurative. But yeah, how do you link that with civic responsibility?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting parallel because you have people that are in chamber, you have people that are part of the same group, but with certain disagreements. And I think in those scenarios, I think one of the most important things to resolve a chamber music type of scenario is just to communicate and to be able to express the reasonings behind the disagreement to each other. And I think in the real world, it definitely is a lot more complicated, and things aren't just solved by simple communication, um, as much as we all wish it would. But I think in those cases, it's important to still keep in mind that you are still part of a group, um, and still part of an overall unity that we call America. And I think in that case, it's like disagreements are going to be there and are going to be present, but doing the best that we can to remember that we aren't two separate groups, we are one unit.
Right,
Yeah.
right. We are as cliche as it sounds. We're in this together.
Yeah.
We do have to figure it
Yeah.
out together. Yeah. Well, beautiful. Thank you so much for these really kind of mindful responses to these questions. And I'm also super excited for you to be voting in your first election. I myself am going to be doing early voting in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again for taking the time. Thank you for being the human being that you are and the violinist that you are, and for yeah, just having an awareness and an openness to the importance of all that's happening these days. So awesome. Okay, thank you so much. I will see you next week for lessons, and have a
Okay.
great weekend.
Perfect.
Take
Thank you.
care.
You
Bye.
too. Bye bye.